Hey
Hi.
everybody,
Hi.
day two of our video DT sharing. So we're going to jump in. It's Psalm 1, so I'll throw the text up. And it starts off with a picture of what a blessed man is. And it's interesting because I think it starts with the negative, what he's not. So it says, blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, who does not stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. And I think it's interesting to note that there's a progression here as it goes from something very active like walking, then standing, then sitting. And that's sort of the progression of, I think, of sin in our lives. We're active and then we eventually become passive and surrender to it. I think there's also another lesson here in terms of how this happens, because I think we don't instantly become wicked or want to live a wicked life, but it's through subtle ways that we begin to fall into the path of the wicked. So first it starts with the counsel of the wicked, then it goes to the way of sinners and the seat of scoffers. And I was thinking counsel, it's what we hear. It's how we hear from others, from the world, our parents, our workplace, our school place, about how we're supposed to live, the mantras of our day, like to seek your own personal satisfaction or happiness. That's most paramount. To look out for yourself only. Don't invest in others. What you do with your time and money, and how we should spend our lives, even our weekends. And I remember just being at the workplace and Monday morning coming around, and I worked in a 25,000 foot square foot warehouse that was converted to a hipster workplace, and we were all around this nice kitchen with espresso and drinking, and you're hearing people's stories of what they spent, what they did over the weekend. And if I didn't have my head on right, I think then what they said to me would really sway how I would live. And I could see that because they're painting a picture of how they spent their weekend eating and drinking and going to this place or that place on vacations and spending their time. And that can be alluring and attractive. And soon you're hearing it and then you're actually with them. You're seeing it and you're investigating and actually checking out those places on the website, where you could go, what you could do, what shows are going on Netflix or Hulu. And then eventually you're seated and you're part of it and you're there with them and you're doing it along with them. And I just thought that's like a progression of how sin works in our lives. That it first starts with this simple hearing and then it moves into actually sitting and being part of it.
Yeah, so like John was saying, I think who we hang out with really matters. And we all kind of know that proverb, a man is known by the company he keeps. And there's actually a Proverbs that talks about that, and it's in Proverbs 13:20. And what it says is, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. So it's saying it really matters, who you hang out with. And I really see that to be true, even in my life, where when I surround myself with my betters, and like, for example, when I'm at our full-time leads meetings with Pastor Ed and Kelly and Pastor Manny and Sunny, it really helps me to strive to imitate them, and it challenges me to try harder and to do better. And I think in the same way, just as in negative ways, we could get pulled by, to do what others do out in the world. In the same way, we can surround ourselves with people who can help spur us on. And, you know, and I know that because I'm a sinner and I'm lazy, I would naturally not push myself. And so even though it may be hard or it may be uncomfortable, it is a source of blessing to surround myself with God's people and with those that can really spur me on. So in verse 2, it talks about his delight is in the law of the Lord. And I was thinking about how do you become a person who delights in the law of the Lord? That sounds really daunting. And, I don't think any of us would naturally be able to say that I delight in the law of the Lord. And when I was a freshman, I was reminded of a time when I would read the Bible. I would try to read the Bible, and it just felt like it was like Greek. I just felt like I don't understand what it's trying to say. And how does this relate to me? What is the relevance of God's word? But what helped me was actually when I started going to Bible studies and hearing it preached and coming to understand, oh, that's what, this text is about. And it opened up my eyes. And it was also through hearing testimonies and hearing how God's word impacted people that really helped me develop a taste for God's word. And so, it's as we immerse ourselves through the preaching of God's word and hearing testimonies, that's how we're going to develop a taste for God's word. So we need to do that more and more.
Yeah, I was thinking about meditating and the idea of day and night and how that's a very rigorous picture, something all consuming all day and all night. And I think this is really applicable for us because we really need to invest in God's word in order to delight in it. Like that's what we need to do. And I think we're actually getting the privilege to do that as we do these DT videos because we're really thinking about the text a lot, like how it applies to us, to personalize it as well as to make sure that we're getting fed, and then how we can help you guys as well. But really, it's causing us to really dig and struggle with the text a lot more. And so I really appreciate it. And I think, man, my delight is going to grow, and in a way, we're more blessed. We're the most blessed through this time. But I think just like anything we've experienced practice or working at over time, you end up delighting in it. Like at first when you played violin or piano, you didn't enjoy it. And sorry, this brings up some painful memories, but then for those who really keep at it, like eventually it becomes a beautiful delight to actually play that instrument in your own space, and it becomes a beautiful experience. So a delightful experience. And I think that's what it takes. It's not something that's going to be instantaneous or right away, but it really takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, I think also similar to what he was saying, when it says on his law he meditates day and night, there's no shortcut. It is just going to be, it requires investment of time and energy, and you can't be mentally lazy. And I think like in everything else, you reap what you sow. So if you don't invest, you're not going to reap, So the more that you really try to struggle with God's word, and more that you really want to get something out of it, the more that you will actually reap from it. So in the next passage, in the next section, it talks about, he's like a tree, and then it compares people who are like a tree to people who are like chaff. And I think the main difference I thought about between these two is that the tree is of benefit and brings life to others around it, whereas the chaff doesn't benefit anybody. It's just dead, and it just gets blown away. And I was thinking about how that is really true to life because, in this world, the kind of life that's glorified and that we're told to strive after is one that is unhampered by any ties or relationships or commitments. And we're told that we should pursue whatever you desire, whatever, whenever. And that sounds really attractive, but it leads us to living a very selfish life because there's no other principle to live by. And we end up becoming really isolated and alone because no one else can join you in the goal of living for yourself, And as a result, you're also not able to help anybody else. You're absolutely useless to everyone else. And whereas, a person who's characterized by being like the tree, they are receiving wisdom from something outside of themselves, from God's word and from God's people. They're rooted. They're committed to others, and so as a result, they are a source of blessing to others and a source of life.
Yes, I think the planted by streams of water yields its fruit in season. Leaf does not wither, all that it does prosper. It's just a picture of life giving. We imagine trees, robust trees, large trees that cover over, provide shade, provide food, birds nest there. The idea of a tree being a home for many and being a shelter. And I think that's the kind of life that is the righteous, who is planted deeply in. And I think this planted is reflected in God's word, that when we're planted deeply in God's word, that's the life-giving source that is going to help us become someone firm and not blown away by the wind of the world that sends us its lies and tells us how we ought to live and really tries to fool us with that idea that obey your thirst, live your own life, do your own thing, you do you, and which is such an attractive way, as Ellen was saying, but also a huge lie. Like that's not going to lead to life. That's not going to lead to greater freedom. That leads to greater enslavement and death. And ultimately, in this passage, from 5 to 6, it tells us what is the path, what is the way of life between these two people, between the wicked and the blessed or the righteous, that there is a final judgment, as we see here, and that God does call us account to our lives. And so how we live does matter then, because there is an end to all things. And so I think that's a very sobering reminder that our choices and decisions do have an end consequence. Otherwise, if it didn't, then we could live however we wanted, but really brings that into sharp focus, I think. All right, so that concludes our sharing for today. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.